Witness number 2, Thomas Edwards. We're going to look at a most unusual and rare work from 1595, Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus, a work containing 2 poems. It is important for a few reasons. It has the first mention in print of Venus and Adonis. It is a twin and companion piece to Venus and Adonis, and they are both written by the same author behind the mask of William Shakespeare and Thomas Edwards. Venus and Adonis was entered on the Stationers' Register on the 18th of April 1593. This rare Ovidian work, Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus, was entered on the Stationers' Register by John Wolfe 6 months later on the 22nd of October 1593, presumably already written by this date. It reveals that the name William Shakespeare was a mask concealing its true author. The little-known work was first published in 1595, printed at London by John Wolfe without the name of an author on its title page. Its dedication to the Right Worshipful Master Thomas Argall, Esquire, and its address to the Honourable Gentlemen and True Favourites of Poetry are signed in the name of one Thomas Edwards. Beyond his name, virtually nothing is known about Thomas Edwards. For nearly 3 centuries, no copy of Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus was known to exist, before a fragmented example of it was discovered by O. Edmonds in the library of Sir C. E. Isham at Lamport Hall, Northamptonshire, in 1867. Coincidentally, this was the same year that John Bruce discovered Bacon's own collection of manuscripts, the so-called Northumberland manuscript. 11 years later, W. E. Buckley discovered a perfect copy of Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus in the Cathedral Library of Peterborough, and in 1882 reprinted it in a scholarly edition for the Roxburgh Club. The extremely rare 1595 edition contains a series of profound secrets concerning its true provenance and authorship, the secret of the royal birth of its real author, and the history-changing secret that the name William Shakespeare is a mask for the true author of the Shakespeare poem Venus and Adonis. Venus and Adonis and Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus are twin companion pieces of literature. They deal with the same themes of love, betrayal, vanity, and the tragic consequences of self-love, and have as their centrepiece a beautiful but self-obsessed young man. The parallels are striking. All the young male protagonists were considered astonishingly beautiful, and interestingly were all hunters and carried spears, and in the case of Adonis, was killed when he was speared by the tusk of a wild boar. The beautiful, haughty Southampton represented a modern-day version of these mythical protagonists. Its hidden author dedicates the work to the Right Worshipful Master Thomas Argall, Esquire, in words, writes Charlotte Michael Stopes, that almost suggest some of Shakespeare's sonnet phrases. Stopes was correct, but not in the way she meant it. The author of the dedication was Shakespeare, i.e. Bacon, who wished to walk where never path was seen. The connections in theme, biography and style between Venus and Adonis and Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus are striking, and taken together strongly suggest common authorship. Additionally, there are some very telling cryptic devices so favoured by the period. The title page has several numerical Baconian ciphers confirming Bacon's authorship. On the first page there is also a Baconian anagram further confirming Bacon's authorship. Most interestingly, Cephalus and Procris begins with the large capital F and forms a monogram. This is a familiar device and also appears in The Rape of Lucrece, the Sonnets, A Lover's Complaint, and the First Folio. Like the Earl of Southampton, to whom Bacon dedicated his two Ovidian-influenced Shakespeare poems, Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece, Cephalus was a beautiful youth. He attracted the attention and love of Aurora, who much enchanted him. Cephalus was, however, married to Procris, a favourite of Diana, the goddess of hunting, used by Elizabethan poets and artists to symbolise Queen Elizabeth. The goddess Diana gave Procris a dog and a magic spear, who gave the presents to her husband Cephalus. In a tragic story of jealousy, Cephalus begins to suspect his wife's fidelity, and when he wrongly believes he hears a noise from an animal in the forest while out hunting, he mistakenly kills her with his spear, and she dies in his arms. This tragedy of mistaken identity, with its central emblem of a magic spear, forms part of Bacon's pseudonym, Shakespeare, whose identity is mistaken by others. In the 1595 edition, the first poem, Cephalus and Procris, is followed by the second longer poem, Narcissus, drawn from another Ovidian tale, Narcissus and Echo in Metamorphoses, that is interwoven into the narrative of Venus and Adonis. The author of Cephalus and Procris Narcissus, points out Stopes, had studied Shakespeare closely. And she says, he makes Narcissus call upon Adonis to come and sit with him. In Aurora's lovemaking to Cephalus, he follows that of Venus to Adonis effectively. Indeed, it is notable both poets treated of the same theme, chaste youths besieged by passionate women. Shakespeare showed that Adonis had no time to think of love, his heart being filled with the pleasures and the glories of the chase. Edward paints in Cephalus the heart filled with his faithful love to his wedded wife. In Narcissus, the coldness arising from self-love. Bacon returned to the Ovidian theme of Narcissus and Echo in the fable Narcissus or Self-Love in The Wisdom of the Ancients. In this work, Bacon draws analogies between the modern world and the ancients, explaining how ancient wisdom can be applied to the modern world. Narcissus is said to have been a young man of wonderful beauty, but intolerably proud, fastidious, and disdainful. In this fable are represented the dispositions and the fortunes too of those persons who, from consciousness either of beauty or some other gift with which nature, unaided by any industry of their own, has graced them, fall in love, as it were, with themselves. To the second longer poem, Narcissus, is added an epilogue, Longbourn. This epilogue includes references to other poets under their aliases or literary pseudonyms, including Edmund Spenser, Colin, Samuel Daniel, Rosamond, and to both Thomas Watson, Amyntas, and Christopher Marlowe, Leander, as recently gone. Immediately underneath these literary devices for identifying the above poets, the 8th stanza refers to Shakespeare as Adon from Venus and Adonis, reinforced by twice using the word love, Venus being the Roman goddess of love and beauty. It alludes to the fact that its author is hidden behind a literary mask, masking through his pseudonym William Shakespeare. The next two stanzas allude to Francis Bacon as Shakespeare and his secret royal birth as the concealed son of Queen Elizabeth and Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. Eke in purple robes distained, amidst the centre of this clime, I have heard say doth remain one whose power floweth far, that should have been of our rhyme the only object and the star. There were many in the Elizabethan government and administration who knew that Bacon was the secret child of Queen Elizabeth, born in the purple, who was adopted by Lord Keeper Sir Nicholas Bacon and his wife Lady Anne Cook Bacon. It was a state secret known to his brother-in-law, Principal Secretary of State Sir William Cecil, and his wife, Lady Mildred Cook Cecil, and various other members of the Privy Council, and some foreign ambassadors and diplomats from the courts of Europe. Bacon's true parentage was also known to Dr. William Rawley, who lived with Bacon for the last 10 years of his life and acted as his literary executor, responsible for the first English biography of Bacon and numerous editions of his works. The first English life of Bacon by Dr. Rawley pointed to his royal birth, and the first life of Bacon published in French repeatedly confirmed it. Certain it is that no one can reproach him with having added less than they to the splendour of his race, being thus born in the purple. Whilst he was born into the purple, Bacon says of himself that he is disdained on account that his mother Queen Elizabeth refuses to acknowledge his royal birth, rendering him a bastard. He is at the centre of this clime, the centre of the literary world, and ordinarily he would be its only object and star, but he must remain hidden, a Don deftly masking through, masked behind his pseudonym of William Shakespeare, whose name is printed below its dedication to the Earl of Southampton. So, with surpassing Baconian wit in Cephalus and Procris, Narcissus, written shortly after Venus and Adonis, Bacon himself reveals that he is the supreme poet Shakespeare. The beautiful but proud young man is a feature of Venus and Adonis and Cephalus and Procris and Narcissus. They are twin companion pieces of literature that were both written by Bacon and inspired by his relationship with Southampton, both being written in their early years together.